Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to another news roundup. I've got 5 stories for you today, including a couple of lighter ones towards the end of the video, but kicking us off is, I suppose, round 2 of the video that I put out on Thursday. As I'm sure you'll remember, it was reported on Wednesday evening that Ferrari had allegedly threatened to quit Formula 1 if the cost cap was set too low. That was flatly denied by the team on Thursday, who insisted that they would look at participating in other series alongside F1 to prevent them having to make too many of their staff redundant. In that interview, Mattia Binotto said that the proposed lower cap could not be attained without further significant sacrifices, and went on to warn that the sport could lose its prestige if teams were forced to adhere to a lower budget. I go over all of that in more detail in Thursday's video, as well as give a few of my thoughts on it also. If you're interested, you can catch up on that by following the link on screen now or at the end of the video. However, on Thursday during a conference call, McLaren boss Zak Brown said that Ferrari's arguments didn't stack up and rubbished suggestions that the sport could lose its place as the pinnacle of motorsport if a lower budget cap were to be introduced. We are in a situation where if Formula 1 goes by its old habits, we are all at extreme risk for the future of F1. I think if we think forward and get with the times, we can not only survive what's going on right now, but I ultimately think the sport can thrive and we all win. I'm all for a good, healthy debate, but I think the comments that I'm being seen put forward don't stack up, contradict themselves, and don't accurately reflect what I think is reality. Clearly then, Brown was not impressed with Binotto's comments, but he didn't stop there, insisting that F1 needs to hurry to address what's going on right now, and even went as far as to say that, although he wouldn't want them to leave, the sport could survive without Ferrari. I'm almost at a loss of what you say to that. I think we all recognise that in modern times we are going through the biggest crisis the world has seen. You have countries shut down, you have industry shut down, and to not be in a hurry to address what's going on, I think, is a critical mistake. It is living in denial. I would hate to see them leave the sport. I would hate to see anybody leave the sport. So that's certainly not something that we'd like to see happen. However, I think the sport can survive with 18 cars on the grid, and I think there are other power unit manufacturers that could cover the 2 teams that are currently powered by them. On the flip side, I think if we land on a budget cap too high and that ends up turning off those that are putting their hands in their pocket investing in F1, I don't think F1 can survive with 14 cars on the grid. Now, Brown did go on to reiterate that he wouldn't want Ferrari to walk away, and that the sport is definitely better off with them than without them, but that it could survive if they left. There were a lot of quotes there, but he had a lot to say and it was well worth covering. Also worth a mention super quickly is that Brown feels the idea of customer cars in F1 is something best left in the 70s, and he does not support the idea as a solution going forward. Of course, that was an idea put forward by Red Bull and appeared to be backed by Ferrari. I am going to move on from this one though, because I had my say earlier this week. But what do you make of Brown's comments, and do you agree that F1 can survive without Ferrari if they ever did walk away? And you can let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section down below. Moving on, and despite consistently stating that they are still targeting as many as 18 races this year, Liberty Media, specifically CEO Greg Maffei, has admitted for the first time that they are planning for the worst case scenario of running no races in 2020. And yes, I know planning for the best and worst case scenarios is obvious, and it's absolutely a no-brainer, you've got to. But he said some interesting stuff, so I'm still going to cover this. But anyway, as well as revealing that, Maffei also said that Liberty has already stepped in to help some of the teams with an advancement of team payments. During a conference call earlier this week, Maffei explained what Liberty had done so far and what scenarios they were planning for when it comes to the 2020 season. We have advanced money in advance of team payments for certain teams already. There are cases where we may do more of that. There are other things that we might do to bridge teams that need help. They are a part of what we need to race successfully in 2020, 2021 and beyond. We have scenarios for 0 races, anywhere from 15 to 18 races, races that begin with no fans at present and only for teams. We really have a host of opportunities or challenges on all fronts, and Chase Carey and his team are presented with multiple options. We are watching how the opening of certain events is happening in Western Europe and certain countries and looking at options around that. That may be the start of the calendar, no guarantees yet, but that would certainly be something that would be attempted. Now, we already knew that racing behind closed doors was one option on the table for the sport, and right now probably the most likely route they will go down if they are able to get the season started. Still a big if, of course. But Maffei added that teams would still need to recover the costs of racing and that if fans aren't able to attend, the sport and teams obviously have a lower profitability, but he believes that the sport should be able to manage that for 2020. So that's good to hear. It's also good to hear that Liberty are supporting the teams, especially those who need it the most right now, and hopefully they will continue to support them throughout this year and beyond as is needed. Next up are the first two stories almost kind of merged together for this one, with Zak Brown saying that the financial hit F1 would take if no races went ahead this year would be devastating. However, he does believe that the current plan Liberty Media have in place to run races without fans could work. Insert the usual line here about F1 being on hold due to the cancellation of the first 9 races, which could become 10 if the French Grand Prix gets postponed as expected and all of that kind of stuff. But as you may remember from last Saturday's video, the current best case scenario for getting the season underway is to hold 2 races behind closed doors at the Red Bull Ring, followed by the same at Silverstone. And that's something that Brown is hopeful can go ahead, as he fears the consequences of not racing at all this year. I think sport has always been a great healer around the world, so I think the appetite for F1, closed doors or not, and sport in general, will be awesome. But if we end up having no F1 this year, I think the financial consequences for all the teams in F1 itself will be devastating. Around $1 billion gets shared with the teams, and if that were to go away or predominantly go away, that's a massive amount of money that we are all depending on. If that went away or was drastically reduced, we are all going to need to find solutions to those lack of resources. I think the plan that Chase has shared with us, which is very much a work in progress, seems to be a very sensible plan. I think going racing without spectators, or certainly in the short term going racing without spectators, is the realistic way to go racing. Wow, welcome to the Zak Brown roundup. Anyway, he went on to add that although he has confidence in the plan, there is still great uncertainty due to the current global situation. I suppose kind of rounding all of that off quickly, Formula One would take a massive hit financially if racing can't go ahead. I think we all pretty much know that. If they are not racing, they are not making money while still having to pay the cost of running a team. And these are costs that don't just disappear because the cars are locked up in a garage. And whilst that will impact smaller teams more than the bigger teams, the teams that have more money essentially, I don't think there's going to be one team that come out of this completely unscathed. What we can take a positive from, though, is Liberty Media's apparent determination to help and protect teams. They know that they need them to come out the other side of this, and they cannot afford to lose even one team. It should also be mentioned at this point that the FIA announced on Friday that it has made changes to its decision-making process, saying that it will now accept majority approval under certain circumstances for 2021 rule changes rather than the unanimous approval of all the teams in order to safeguard the championship. So, I guess whether Ferrari, Red Bull or whoever are on board with the proposed lower cost cap or not could become pretty irrelevant if a majority of teams were to back it being reduced further for next season. However, the line in the new regulations, in exceptional circumstances, is an interesting line because that creates a lovely grey area for teams who are perhaps against the cost cap to potentially explore. Let's just put it this way, this one is going to rumble on for a while. Right then, I'm classing the next two as lighter news, especially this one, because realistic or not, it gets me very excited. Sad, I know. But Imola are open to hosting an F1 race in 2020 so long as it is held behind closed doors and the government allow for it to go ahead. This isn't the first time the circuit has made that offer, of course. Earlier this year, shortly after the Chinese Grand Prix was postponed, wow, doesn't that feel like an eternity ago? They offered to fill the void left by the race in Shanghai in April, but nothing ever really came of that. But Imola President Uberto Salvatico ostents, that's about the best I can do with that one, and I'd love to pretend that was the first attempt, but it really wasn't. But he's come forward again and said that so long as it is given the nod from the government, he would offer to host a race at the circuit for free. This situation is an opportunity for us to be a candidate for a Grand Prix this season. They need some races in order to have a World Championship, so why not think about Imola? Of course, we'll offer the track for free and then talk about costs on our side if possible. We are not in a situation where we can pay a promoter's fee. It is much easier without spectators. We don't have to take care of the grandstands. We don't have to take care of things like VIP hospitality and so on. For sure, it will be cheaper than a complete organisation. If you've followed this channel long enough, you'll probably already know my take on this. It begins with yes and ends with please. I love Imola. I really do. And although, yeah, it probably would be pretty terrible when it comes to the racing, especially with the modern day cars, we've already got some very wide, purpose-built modern day tracks that also throw up shockingly bad races, so it can't be any worse than those, surely. Okay, yes, I will hold my hands up and admit that I probably just love the idea of the track returning because of the nostalgia aspect of it, but it does almost sort of make sense. If the situation improves in Italy in time and the authorities allow it to go ahead, it might be a decent solution to the problem of trying to get enough races in to make up a World Championship season. It is likely from a logistical point of view that most of the racing will initially have to take place in Europe, so why not run it back to back with, say, Monza, obviously assuming that can go ahead at some point as well. And it would be great as well to see some other tracks around Europe offer to host some races too, and perhaps they will. But even running a closed-door event isn't going to be cheap, and that money has got to come from somewhere, so we'll see. But as much as I love this idea, I seriously doubt it will happen. I can dream though. And finally, Lando Norris has made the switch to IndyCar. Well, virtually at least, for this weekend's iRacing Challenge. IndyCar, as well as some other series including F1, has been hosting a number of virtual events over the last few weeks to keep people entertained if nothing else. And they are events which have, by all accounts, been really well put together. I haven't personally watched any yet, but I might have a look at them this weekend. But this Saturday's event will be the 5th round of the championship and we'll see drivers, including McLaren's Lando Norris, take on the Circuit of the Americas. Norris was invited to join the series by IndyCar and will drive for the Arrow McLaren SP team, and if you're interested, you can catch the race live for free on YouTube from 7:30pm UK time this Saturday. That's tonight as this video goes out, assuming everything goes to plan and this video goes out on time. But anyway, that is it for this roundup. Don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the comments section on whether or not you believe F1 could survive without Ferrari. And also, as well as Imola, are there any other European tracks you'd like to see host a race this year? Now, I will be back soon with more content as ever, but in the meantime, don't forget that you can of course follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching and I will catch you again in the next one. Bye bye.